think I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Amanda Latre. I'm the WISE Program Support Coordinator. Welcome. This is our second session of Landing an Industry Position. We had our first session last evening. It was terrific. So excited to have a new panel with us today this morning. This event is co-sponsored by WISE. That stands for Women in Science and Engineering. I also want to recognize our other co-sponsor, the Graduate School. I want to thank Dr. Glenn Wright and his team for supporting us in offering these two events. I'd like to make one other acknowledgement before I move on to our announcements. We acknowledge with respect the Onondaga Nation, firekeepers of the Haudenosaunee, the indigenous people on whose ancestral land Syracuse University stands. Okay, so like I said, a couple of announcements before we jump into our content for today. You'll note we are recording the session today. We will make the recording available to you a little bit later this week once we get that up. We also recorded yesterday's session if you weren't able to attend, so I'll be sharing both of those out to all of our registrants later this week. You'll note you are muted. We have a good sized group today, which is just terrific, and to kind of keep that background noise down, we keep everybody muted, but please know we want this to be a very interactive session. You are welcome to post questions in the chat. You can raise your hand. You can unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question. Yesterday's session was quite interactive. We had a lot of questions and we just loved it. It was terrific and we want to keep that going. So if you have questions, feel free to share. Also, if you'd like to ask a question anonymously, we certainly respect your privacy, totally fine. You can shoot me or our moderator, Dr. Tracy Balduzzi, a private chat and we'll ask your question for you. That's no problem. Okay, let's see here. Finally, I do want to mention, many of you have heard this from me before, but we always evaluate our programs. We really appreciate your feedback. We try and keep those evaluations short and easy to complete. I'll be posting that link in the chat near the end of today's program. Would really appreciate you taking a minute or two to complete. Okay, that's all I had for announcements. All right, so now I'm going to pass things along to our moderator for today, Dr. Tracy Balduzzi. She's Associate Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Graduate School here at Syracuse University. She was with us last night and back with us this morning, and so appreciate you being with us, Tracy. I'll pass it to you.
Thank you, Amanda. And first, let me just say good morning to everyone joining us. We have a full room again today, so that's great. I'm going to go ahead and just get started now. We're going to have our panelists introduce themselves, and then they're going to talk about their academic and industry career journey, their role and responsibilities, and their biggest success and or challenges along the way. And we'll just go in alpha order like you see on the screen. So Nafis, if you want to go first, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Tracy. Good morning to all the attendees, and thank you for your time and attending these sessions. My name is Nafis, and I graduated in 2020 from a PhD program in Syracuse University. And Tracy, excuse me, remind me, do you want us to go over those questions as well, or?
Yep, just spend about 5 to 6 minutes just talking about your journey, your role and responsibility that you have now, and then maybe a success or challenge.
Sure. So I grew up in a family with a lot of engineers. So of course I was very interested from early age, especially to construction and building designs. So I started my career as civil engineer, and I went straight ahead to industry while also doing my master's. And the reason I wanted to pursue my master's was in the country I lived at the time. We had a very bad earthquake, a disastrous earthquake in 2003. It was a magnitude of, I think, 6.6. And we had a lot of fertility, and for that reason, I wanted to pursue seismic design of structures. So I enrolled in master's program, but at the same time, I was also working in industry, in heavy industry production. After 7 years of working in industry, I just thought I need to learn more and do more. So I pursued my PhD, and I ended up at Syracuse University, which I knew Dr. Liu's textbooks from my master's degree. We had studied them, and it was an honor to work with him during my PhD. And well, coming from industry background, I always loved seeing what I'm designing is actually being built and people are using it and it's put into good use. So I really enjoyed that feeling and seeing the result of my design. So I decided to follow being in industry, and I was always passionate about bridge design. So I transferred to transportation industry here in the US. And I think it was in 2018 that we moved in California, and I've continued working in industry since then. And to my dream, I've been working on Golden Gate Bridge. There's a project, some of you guys might have heard about, suicide deterrent net system. So you might know, but Golden Gate Bridge is the bridge that has most suicide rate in the world. And so even though a lot of people are there from Golden Gate District, preventing people from jumping down, but still we have a high rate of suicide. So we're building a net to help with that. And in the current firm that I'm working at, I also wanted to be involved in management roles and leadership roles. So because of my extensive background in design, they offered me office quality management. So basically making sure that the quality of the deliverables that we're submitting to our clients are in a good shape. So I've been also working on that capacity. And the biggest success and challenges along the way. I think my biggest success, which was also my challenge, was work-life balance. I'm still struggling from some aspects. I can tell, and I'm sure a lot of people who had experienced work-life balance issue, they would admit that having a good partner and understanding partner really helps. So I was lucky enough that my husband was also doing PhD at SU, and we graduated at the same year. We started at the same year. So I was really fortunate having him understanding every step that I'm going through and supporting me. And when he needed, I supported him. When I needed, he would support me. And so in my third year of PhD, I had my daughter. It got especially challenging then because, because it's obvious. I had a little bit issue with my work-life balance, but I think with the support that I got, both from my family and from SU, from our civil engineering department, all the professors, all the staff, and my friends, it was really helpful. So I was able to lower my work at SU, but still have same amount of time that I used to spend on my research and continue on that. So that was my biggest success and challenge. Thank you.
Absolutely, that does sound challenging, as I'm sure some participants can relate. Having a child while PhD is a challenge. Okay, next up is Sheila. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi all. So I'm Sheila Sears, Sheila Shahidzadeh Sears, as many people know me from Syracuse. So I graduated in 2018 from the biology PhD program. I was in Sandra Hewitt's lab, so trained neuroscientist, neurobiologist with a background in cellular, molecular, and behavioral neurobiology. And most recently, I did a postdoc out at UCSF here in San Francisco, kind of building upon some of the work I had done in my graduate career. And, I focused mainly on seizures and epilepsy research when I was in grad school and in my postdoc. And it was about a year after arriving in San Francisco, I realized I wanted to be in industry. I mean, out here, biotech is pretty big. And I'm from here, so I really wanted to stay here. And this was my way to be able to stay here and make a living, honestly, because San Francisco is very expensive. So I decided to make the transition to industry as quickly as soon as I decided that. And it always had been in the back of my mind, but I had always kind of considered academia as well. And I think it just came to the realization that geographically, in order to stay here, I would need to be in industry, and I could do a lot of what I wanted to do in academia in industry, which is find novel therapies and targets for neurological disease states. So that realization that that could be done on the biotech industry side as well. And there was a lot of creative basic research even going on there was key in my decision to make that transition. And so currently I'm a preclinical scientist for Charles River Laboratories. Charles River is a CRO, it's a contract research organization. And what that means is we conduct a lot of the preclinical neuroscience studies at our site for biotech and pharma companies. So they come to us with their experimental design, and they oftentimes need a lot of consulting done as well. And they're trying to do a lot of the pharmacokinetic, pharmacodynamic PK/PD studies on their target or their drug targets. They're looking at, how is this drug interacting in an animal? Is it going to influence behavior? So we're looking at a lot of different disease models for like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and epilepsy. And, in this role, I'm able to really grow as a scientist. So I applied to this job about a year and a couple months ago. And so I've been here for almost a full year now. And I was really interested in it because it was going to allow me to grow in that I could quickly lead a team of researchers. So a CRO has like a lot of rapid advancement opportunities. And that was something I was looking for, is to get into the preclinical side of research and drug development and be able to grow, learn about like all the different drug molecules and targets that pharma is using currently. So like by working with a lot of different clients, I'm able to kind of see the lay of the land more quickly, I think, than I would if I went straight to a biotech or pharma company. And then also I was given the opportunity to have direct reports very early on from joining. So that's a bit of what I do in the lab every day. My job is pretty balanced in that I'm in the lab about 50% of the time, and then I'm doing like trial management the other 50% of the time, and talking with different biotech and pharma scientists about their research design, and chatting about like how to move things forward and designing their experiments, and then doing a lot of the analysis that our team is producing. And so that's my current role. And then my biggest successes and challenges along the way, well, I'd say a challenge is that the transition to industry was pretty eye-opening, in that like the pace is just a lot faster than in academia. So I was very much used to conducting my research at my own pace. And really the difference was it was working on 1 or 2 projects to going to like 15 to 20 a month. And so, every day is something different in industry, and just being able to quickly pivot and think about different disease models every single day. It's been a challenge, but it's been pretty rewarding because, we're able to see a lot of different projects through to fruition in like a very short manner. And yeah, it's we at the CRO, we're not really gaining that huge depth that you're seeing if you're leading the research project yourself in industry. We're seeing things, wider breadth, lesser depth, but it's been a challenge, but it is, you see the success in that, like Charles River probably, I think now they see 80% in the preclinical testing round, they see 80% of the drugs come through our sites that go on to FDA approval. So like we're seeing a lot of the drugs that are getting finally approved, we're seeing them come through our site and like doing that preclinical testing. And as far as biggest successes, I would say probably just landing a role that allows me to pursue my interest, which is it's in the neuroscience realm. I'm able to grow. That's a really big thing for me. So I've learned a lot about project management. I've learned a lot about the preclinical side of R&D, and getting to work with these other pharma and biotech companies to understand their decision-making processes has been really informative for my first year in industry. Like I'm getting just to see a lot of progress on their end, and it's been really informative and has helped me decide like which route I want to go next, as far as like, do I want to go to biotech or I want to stay at a CRO? So, yeah.
Great, thank you. And Sheila, I have to say you are so awake for it being so early where you are. So that's so impressive.
I really don't feel that awake, but thank you.
Well, you're coming across as it. So, okay. And then last we have Kayla.
Thank you, Tracy. Hi, everyone. I'm Kayla Wagner. I am currently Vice President of Product Management at Quadrant Biosciences, which is a epigenetics diagnostics company. And I just want to say it's such a pleasure to be speaking to all of you this morning. When I was in graduate school, I was actually an active member of WISE. So I sat in your exact seats. I was really eager and interested in learning more about potential career opportunities available to me. And so I want to tell you a little bit briefly about my story and how I got to where I am. I took a bit of a non-traditional path, so I hope it's interesting to you. When I was at Syracuse University in graduate school, I studied clinical psychology at SU. And while I was in graduate school, I was providing both diagnostic and counseling services to children and adolescents with neurodevelopmental disorders and psychiatric disorders. I had studied neuroscience and psychology in my undergraduate career, and I was really fascinated by psychiatric disorders, both treating them and researching them. So my research interests surrounded clinical psychopathology. I was highly involved in and independently conducting independent research surrounding social and communication deficits or challenges associated with specific disorders like autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, and rare genetic disorders. But while I was studying in graduate school, I really had a strong interest in translational science. So what I mean by that is I really wanted my research and my projects that I was involved in to have a high clinical impact. So I always wonder if it was the psychologist inside of me, but I didn't want to just advance my field of study scientifically. I really wanted to put my findings into good use and make an impact in the lives of children, patients, and the individuals that I was researching. I wanted my findings to really reach patients. So interestingly, while I was in graduate school, a colleague of mine sent me a manuscript that was published by a team at SUNY Upstate, Penn State College, and also a startup company formerly known as Motion Intelligence, which is now called Quadrant Biosciences. And the idea behind the paper was that the researchers had suggested that there was epigenetic molecules in saliva that could strongly predict who had autism. So it was able to differentiate and identify children with and without autism early in development. And since I was diagnosing autism myself in clinical practice, I was also highly researching it. I found this very fascinating. I understood the importance of adding biomarkers and biological indications into the field of mental health because biology is somewhat lacking in that field. And so what I did was I requested to meet with some of the leadership at Quadrant Biosciences. They were right down the hill at SUNY Upstate. They're actually embedded within the hospital system itself. And so I thought it would be a great thing to talk to them a little bit about their research, understand what was behind this project, and meet with the people who had published this. And I think it was pretty obvious during our initial interactions how passionate I was about their work, because very soon after I was a part of the Quadrant team. So just to spend 2 minutes understanding a little bit about what Quadrant is. So we're an epigenetics diagnostics company. We were founded in 2015 and co-located within SUNY Upstate Medical University. And what that allows us to be is a very translational in nature, meaning that individuals who are conducting independent research for PhD work or in academia as professors, we're able to translate some of that technology and bring it to life. We bring it to clinical practice and into doctors' offices so that patients can benefit from the findings. And so we focused specifically at Quadrant on early detection and diagnosis of actually autism spectrum disorder, but also Parkinson's disease, mild TBI, and other large-scale health issues. And so my role at Quadrant has been quite interesting because when I first joined the team, really what my role was to develop the infrastructure surrounding our clinical research efforts. So as you know, spending time in academia, I had a lot of experience in how grants function and how to get things done quickly and well, as far as collecting data, integrating it. And so this just kind of took off because I joined the team, I think in 2016. We started to get significant number of grant funding. And by the time I was sort of finished in that research role as vice president of research, we had developed research relationships with over 30 academic medical centers, both in North America, Central America, and in Europe. What I did was I led and I managed several multi-site grants of over $2 million funded by the NIH. And I really built out our research department to scale. So I led a really diverse team of high-performing scientists and researchers. And then I transitioned to my current role, which is Vice President of Product Management. Here, I'm able to manage our commercial saliva-based diagnostic product for autism, which is commercially available and in doctors' offices. And so this has been really rewarding for me because I'm able to oversee activities by cross-functional teams. So I work alongside senior leadership in marketing, sales, operations, regulatory, and technology, which are all roles that I, didn't have a wealth of knowledge about, spending a lot of my time in academia. And so it's been quite a rewarding experience. And, I'm telling you this story because I just want you all to know that my journey led me exactly where I'm supposed to be. I started out by telling you that I had a strong interest in translational research, and now I'm in a position that allows me to work alongside a team that's really quite dedicated to bringing, scientific findings developed out of academia directly into clinical practice to improve the lives of patients and the clinical diagnosis and management of childhood disorders, but also other neurological conditions that are very relevant and widespread. So I hope that's helpful to you, and I'm happy to answer questions. I'll pass it back to Tracy.
Thank you, Kayla. And that is such a great example too of how people network and connect, because there are some SUNY Upstate students on here as well as SU students. So the way you just explained that is great. And I do see a lot of repeat names from yesterday, so that is wonderful. And you all know how this is, the next part of this is going to go, but we're opening it up for questions. So I welcome anyone, if they want to unmute and ask the question themselves, just raise your hand. If you prefer me to ask the question to our panelists, feel free to either put it in the chat, or if you don't want your name said, just private message either me or Amanda. Okay, but we'll get right into questions. And so first, I'll start off and then we'll go with the attendees. But the first question we have is, how has the pandemic impacted your field and position? And whichever one like to go first, feel free. Thank you, Nafis.
Of course. Ironically, I did ask this question from our management a month ago, that I had a discussion with them about our ongoing projects and the quality of our work. So transportation has been affected a lot because our clients, we are consultants, so our clients who are transportation firms or different agencies, they've all been affected because part of their source is the tolls and other incomes from the society, right? Fortunately enough, in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, we've not been affected as much, at least not our firm. But I do hear a lot of projects have been paused. So what companies are doing in the area that I know have been, some firms have decided to reduce the salary of the higher management by 10 or 20% for the year of the pandemic instead of laying off some employees. I know some other firms are choosing to put their employees in part-time condition or 3 months, 2 months business leave. So it has been affected, but in my experience, if you really devote yourself to the work and you do your work well, you can still not even hold your position, but even grow it and get promoted. I personally got promoted twice this year, which I consider myself really lucky for that. But thank you. What I'm trying to say is that I understand it's a very hard situation, and I do not judge anyone who has lost their job. It's very hard. But I also think we can take responsibility and just push ourselves a little bit further than our comfort zone. 10%, 15%, I guess, would be enough, because what I see is a lot of people unfortunately give up. And I just want to say it's to us to some degree. I think we have a say and can decide to change our path. But with regards to hiring, I understand in a lot of industries, and particularly in transportation, which is very important to have that supervision on new staff, we have reduced drastically our new hires for the entry level, for internship or other entry levels. On the other hand, we have hired a lot of managers because we need to go get more work. So we need very well experienced people. But I can say if you're graduated from a college, it is challenging to get into this industry, probably more so if you haven't built your connections. There's an advertisement that a lawyer says the best time to get a lawyer is when you don't need it. So I've always tried to use that. And my current position, I secured this 6 months before I really planned to get a job. I started making calls and someone offered and it was a good position, so I just applied. So I think it's really important to not wait for that last minute and just start pursuing your career, seeing what you want, talk with this manager, that hiring manager, and LinkedIn has made it so easy, right? I access people in California from Syracuse without traveling. So I think it's a very important thing to know, to start working and building all those connections. And you don't need to tell them you're looking for a job. Just start the conversation and really gain their feedback. If they're satisfied, who knows, maybe that's not the field that you're interested. Maybe you're going to switch to another field. So that was my intake.
Thank you, Kayla or Sheila. And then we have some questions from the participants. But how has your job been impacted by the pandemic?
So I was hired during the pandemic in early May of 2020. And I will just say for CROs, contract research organizations, our work is incredibly busy right now because as a lot of biotech companies have they were working remote for a lot of the year. They're looking to outsource more of their preclinical testing. And so, you know, the week that UCSF shut down and I was told to go home from my postdoc and I don't know when I would come back, the site director of my company was calling me up and saying, hey, when can you come in and start up the seizure and epilepsy models here? We really need you. And so that's just indicative of we were scaling up our research at that time. And that was unique to maybe our area, as biotech was exempt from a lot of the stay-at-home orders. Yet some smaller companies still stayed home. And so they outsourced a lot of their work, and we get a lot of work from across the US as well as internationally too. So though we went into a hiring freeze shortly thereafter, they kind of snuck in me as a hire, and then we opened back up to new hires in June. So CROs are, they were briefly impacted, I think, with the hiring freeze, at least at our CRO, but since then we've been busier than ever, and I find it's a great place to be right now, as it's hard to find good training, I think, during the pandemic, and I was trained very well in the past year, and so I think I was really fortunate to have gotten in when I did. But yeah, that's kind of what the pandemic's been like at a CRO, and we have remained open the entire time. We're conducting all of our studies just as normal. Of course, we've had to initiate a lot of extra precautions, and we do have weekly testing available to us if ever people want that. So yeah.
I can jump in and add a little bit of color too about what my experience has been like. The pandemic has significantly influenced what my day-to-day activities are like at work. We launched our Clarify ASD product, which is our epigenetic diagnostic product for autism, in early 2020. So by March of that year, we no longer had access to pediatricians. Our sales team could not speak to them in person. So being able to educate and draw awareness to a brand new product just seemed impossible. And so, what we decided to do was repurpose our inventory of saliva collection kits to the COVID diagnostic efforts. So we worked really closely with SUNY Upstate. We, at one point, in early 2021, we stopped the sales of our commercial ASD product, and we used all of our inventory for COVID testing. And at this point, we have over 100 active sites that are using our product. It's FDA authorized. We worked very closely with SUNY Upstate. We scaled all of this, by the way, in a matter of about 10 days. We had clients that were actively using the product. And so I'm telling you this because I think that's the nature of industry, that working specifically for a startup too in biotech, you have to work really closely with your peers. Your job it shifts quickly, and it's not going to be the same every day. So it shows that, by working alongside of your team, you can really create a unified solution to a real world immediate problem. And that happens a lot in industry. You're going to experience challenges or unexpected, things that you need to pivot with your team and act fast and work together. And in this case, we needed to keep our communities safe. So my role transitioned very quickly to product management of COVID-19 diagnostics, which I knew nothing about. And so it was a really, fun journey, definitely interesting and challenging, but definitely also really rewarding. So.
Thank you for that. And what a great example of pivoting, as we've all had to do, right? Okay, so our next question actually comes from Courtney, and it's for all of you. And she asks, have you faced gender-based adversity during your time in industry? And if so, how was that navigated? I don't know if any of you have faced that.
So I'll haven't. Yeah, oh, go ahead, Nafis. I haven't. I have a really awesome female boss leading my team, actually, and I found, that our team is actually 80% female, so we're very woman-centric, and it's been awesome. Maybe that's unique to the neuroscience field, but it's been a great experience thus far. Of course, I've only been here for a year, and I haven't gone to the upper echelons of executive roles yet, or management, where maybe this might exist more. I'm still, at an entry level scientist 2 position. So to be continued, I suppose. And as those things arise, I know I'll draw back on my experiences talking with other people in WISE. So yeah.
Um, for me, I've actually experienced that. I'm working in a department. We're about 20 structural engineers, which I'm the only female in it. So in a lot of meetings, especially when I just started, I really didn't have enough voice. And I have to say, the trainings and all the sessions that I attended for WISE and also grad school really embraced the good thoughts in my brain to really push myself a little bit further. And my solution to that, especially if you're a little bit cautious and you would have cautious personality, it would be a little bit more challenging for you, especially in the industry that I'm working in. There's a lot of fights and a lot of meetings, and you really have to find your voice. So what I did here was I communicated this with my manager, and I told him that I need a little bit more support on this. And luckily enough, we have a Women in Transportation seminar association across the world, actually, WTS. Some of you might have heard about it, which is very empowering. And they had a 5 full-day training with women in leadership. And I gained a lot of experience and courage from those trainings. And I learned I can start with little talks in the meetings just to get my personality out there and let them know that sometimes I disagree. And so I started with that. And then I also tried to find not only mentors, but also some female sponsors within the firm. I'm sure a lot of you know the difference between mentor and sponsor, which mentor will help you to find your way, but sponsor has the power to put you in a position and lead you from there. You, being female in the firm that in the industry that I am, I really needed a sponsor. And that's something that I was told in the WTS leadership program as well. And I noticed, a lot of the female leaders around me do have really strong sponsors. And it's really good to know that a lot of female in this industry support each other and understand the difficulties on the way. So that also helped me a lot, having sponsor within the firm and also outside the firm, just to communicate with them what are my challenges and what is the best way to approach this problem or that problem, and that really helped me. I've also asked my manager to hire another female.
I like that. Kayla, do you have anything else to add?
My experience has been really similar to Nafis as she's describing. While we have diversity among our team and female leadership, there are many times that specifically in external meetings, I may be the only female in the room. And I think, instead of getting intimidated by something like that, I think it's really important to sit back and be proud of yourself that you are the only female at that table, to find your voice like she's describing, to be firm and direct in your communication, and you will be heard. And I think, again, it's feeling proud in those moments, right? It's really rewarding to be a part of those discussions, especially as the only female. You may have a different perspective. You may have things to add that others didn't think of. But I think that's just something to always remember, that you are just as qualified as the person sitting next to you.
Thank you. That's really great advice too. Our next question comes from Anna, and it is directed at Kayla. How do you feel about your transition from clinical psychology to a company working on molecular work? And did you have any laboratory bench experience, or did you have to learn any of that for your current role or position?
That's a great question, Anna. So I didn't have any laboratory bench work, and I did have to do a lot of studying and reading, but I think this is a skill set that everyone on this call is highly attuned to. Many times in graduate school, right, we would get a asked to write a paper about something that we weren't quite sure what it even was, or who the authors were, or what the science was behind the technology. I'm a big believer in reading, digesting information, comprehending it. And as long as you can speak competently about it, you're going to succeed. So I did have to learn a lot about molecular diagnostics. I knew a lot about autism spectrum disorder because of my previous experiences, but I think it's important to always remember that the skill sets that we learn in graduate school are very applicable in industry. Being able to write about things, read about things, and effectively communicate them is something that I think everyone on this call has the ability to do. And so that really helped me. And I'm so happy that I'm in a role like this. I couldn't be happier with my transition from being a clinical research scientist to a product manager, because I'm learning so much. I remember my mentor in graduate school used to always tell me that you learn more outside of the classroom than you do inside. And I think that really resonates with me because I've just learned a lot of skill sets that I didn't know about. And that's been a really rewarding experience for me.
Thank you. And what a great way to talk about transferable skills. So I really appreciate that. Our next question comes from Isabel. What are some tips you might have for pursuing promotions once you are in an industry position? And maybe Nafis can start on that because she was talking about how she's been promoted a few times during the pandemic. I think she might be frozen. So if Kayla, oh, there we go.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Oh, absolutely. What are some tips you might have for pursuing promotions once you are in an industry position?
I know a lot of firms have something that at least our firm calls it CPD. So it's basically annually we touch bases with our manager and define some goals for our upcoming year. And also we evaluate the past year and how did we really perform in our own opinion with regards to the goals that we set for ourselves. So I believe communication is the most important thing. You need to, especially in my field, it was hard to really get that promotion. For some reason, I felt that I'm being left behind because I don't talk about it a lot. So some of my sponsors really helped me, as well as the mentors that I was talking with. They recommended me to continue that communication. And you have to bring this into your manager's radar and higher manager's radar, not only your manager. So because there are sometimes positions within a firm that your manager might be very busy and he or she might not even think about, but that position is available there. So if you continue your communication with the higher management and let them know what you can bring on the table, say, hey, aside from this, I can do this and this, I can help with this, I have input on this. And that really helps them. If a position comes up, they would reach out to you. So what I did was actually that to let my higher manager know, because people usually know me as technical person in the firm. And I had to remind the higher manager that this is not the only thing I can do. I'm really good at management as well. I have delivered a lot of quality work and I'm passionate about quality. I think I can do a lot in this field. And so just letting them know what you can do. And also, aside from communication, do your own study. Get in touch with a lot of people in your firm. They say it's very important that as soon as you get started, within the first month, 2 months, try to keep like lunch meetings. I know that's not really possible to do in person right now, but I'm sure a lot of managers would be happy to hold like a 30-minute Zoom meeting with you. Let them know who you are, because not all of them are aware of all the resources they have in the company. Just introduce yourself to them and really find out how you can be more helpful in getting the company's goal and helping them. So I think that would be very helpful in getting promoted.
Great, thank you. Kayla?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Navis's comments. It's about communication, but also demonstrating your full potential, right? Demonstrating your abilities, showing that you're capable of things that might be outside your job description. That's what I've noticed leads to career advancement and promotions is a couple things. One is being able to work well with your teammates. So you'll see that when you're in a position that fits you well, fits your personality well, you'll excel, right? So making sure that the company, the culture that you choose, the company that you choose to work for is a good fit for you and your personality, but also having grit, right? Making sure that you're willing to persevere when there's challenges that arise or things that arise that are outside your normal work activities. The only way that your colleagues or your supervisors are going to see what you're capable of is if you show glimmers of it. If you show what you can do that might not be part of your everyday role. And so I think what I mean here is choose a place that you like, choose people that you like to be around and that you work well with, and just work really hard, and people notice that.
Great, thank you. And I think, Kayla, you might be a closet academic using all the terms that you've been using. Sheila, do you have anything you'd like to add?
You know, I couldn't agree more with everything you two just said. I think communication is a huge thing. The transition from academia to industry, it's wild because you're going from working, you're the only person driving this research forward a lot of the time, to now I'm part of a, 15-person team and we're all in this together. So like demonstrating that ability to communicate and be on the same page with your team members is super important. And at Charles River, we also have a performance goal related system where, twice a year we meet with our managers and we discuss where we came from, where we want to go. And I think identifying what the traits are in the next role that I want, which is a senior scientist position, what does that look like? And how can I incorporate those things into my goal plan for this coming year? And so my hiring manager was super excited. Of course, she wants to see us all grow. I think having those defined metrics, it was very corporate to me. I was like, okay, this is all very formal, but it's actually really helpful to set those down, and it just gives us like a more formal mechanism, kind of like a committee meeting in academia where you have to talk about what you did and where you want to go. So I think so far, like, I think my experience has been, I've been here for about a year, and there's been opportunities to demonstrate my expertise in certain areas, and just hanging on to those opportunities and demonstrating your work ethic and your grit, all of those things, your ability to communicate is super important when the opportunities arise.
That is some great advice. I really appreciate that. The next question is from Aditi. I hope I said your name correctly, but what is one piece of advice you wish you had known when you were looking for an industry job?
I can start here, if that's okay with my teammates. So I think my biggest piece of advice here is to really be true to yourself and to follow what you're passionate about and what interests you, because I think that's what really resonates in an interview, right? It's, when looking for a job, you don't have to study what your strengths and weaknesses are and prepare for questions like that. You want to understand the company's mission, how you fit into their culture, why you would be a good part of their team. I read all about the science behind their technology so that I could speak competently about it as if I was already part of their team. And I think that that's something you can do too. Read about your potential future colleagues' bios, what they've done in their past, what is the company planning to do moving forward, so that you can have in-depth discussions, because that truly resonates as passion, and that really shows that you're interested in the job, and that will make you stand out from other people that are applying, because you have to remember that when applying for a role, there are so many qualified candidates, but people want to hire someone that they like to work with. And so if you're able to demonstrate that you are really fit into the company, fit into their culture, you like what they're doing, you're interested in their the science behind their technology, or whatever it might be. Those are the things that really will make you stand out. So I think just being true to what you're most interested in when you look for a job, a potential career.
Great, thank you. Nafis or Sheila, would you like to add any pieces of advice you'd wish you'd known?
I had a pretty similar recommendation as to Kayla. I think do your due diligence on the technologies that they're working with, reading people's LinkedIn bios. So I actually have a presentation scheduled today for a biotech company here in the Bay Area, an epilepsy focused company. And I've been, wholly focused on just reading up on the technology and, letting your expertise and technicality, all your experience in the past speak for itself. I mean, they'll see that come through, but really focusing in on where does the company want to go, and showing your interest in, the risks that they foresee, what their next few years look like. And everybody likes to talk about their own research, industry professionals included. So, yeah.
I couldn't agree more with Kyla and Sheila that it's really important to really get to know the culture you want to be part of, and understand what you're really passionate about. I also want to add that it's very important to really see follow these people and leaders who really want to get involved with as early as you can. So if you start all these activities, say a year or a couple years before you want to start your work, your career, it helps you understand what are all the different paths and what are all the different options that you can have. It's never late, even if you start, like, say, a month before you start your career, but it is also really helpful to not waste your own time. I think for me, I wish I knew that before, and I knew that how much networking and getting connected with people is of importance. I knew I'm passionate about bridge engineering, but I never knew what are the challenges and if I really can switch fields. It was kind of switching for me from heavy industry to bridge engineering. And talking with a lot of people, I started about a year, but I truly wish I had started 3 years before that to really had known all my options. And that's my only piece of advice.
No, that's good advice. I tell people all the time, it's never too early to start your professional network. Okay, the last question I have from our attendees is from Shubhasri. I hope I said that correctly, and I apologize if I didn't, but what are some things to keep in mind as one transitions from academia to industry, particularly those involved in research? Like, how is the research similar or different between academia and industry? And that's a long question, so if you need me to repeat it, please let me know.
I can jump in here. So I think there are some major differences between academia and industry. One of them that I can think of is having problem solving and critical thinking skills. So what I mean by that is, there are going to be novel challenges that you experience with your research as a function of it being part of industry. There's going to be times when you have to meet with your team and think of solutions to things that were unexpected, problems or challenges that don't follow a traditional grant type structure. And so, like, being able to think on your feet and be solution focused and not problem focused, which is something that I say often, probably too much to my team, but being able to meet with people and come up with a lot of solutions to challenges that you didn't didn't foresee, I think is a unique part of working for industry. And if that's a strength of yours, then you will likely really enjoy working in this type of setting. So that's just one thing that I can think of as a bit different between those two categories.
Great, thank you. And we have a couple more minutes. So Nafis or Sheila, would you like to add anything?
I would say, just to reiterate from earlier, that the pace is just pretty different. You know, you're working on many, many different projects at once, at least for me, and versus, you know, kind of a single or maybe two projects in academia. So that pace is definitely something that, you know, it can make your head spin, but it's also really cool to think about all of the different directions that the company is going. So just, you know, embracing it and not getting too overwhelmed when you land that first position in industry, I think is important.
I also agree with Kyla and Sheila, and I think there are some skills that are transferable. And if you think about it from the bigger picture, they're not really that different. I think actually PhD helps to put up those specific skills that are really important when you are communicating with either public or your client, because being a PhD, you've learned to hear a lot and hear a lot of critics as well on your work, and you've learned to listen them well and put them into action and really change your thought process. This is really important in industry that not a lot of people have, which when you put that aside next to the problem-solving skill, it gives you a lot of value. And I think this is an argument that a lot of us can use during our interview and really let our managers know that if you're a grad student with no industry background, you can let them know that, hey, this is how I'm different from an entry level, and these are other benefits that I can bring in the table.
I think that is great advice from all three of you. Thank you so much. It's 10:58, so if anyone has any other last minute questions they want to sneak in there, feel free. I also don't want to stifle any of the conversation, so I won't but it doesn't seem like there are any other questions from our panelists. So in the last few minutes, one of the questions that I had that we haven't been able to get to, but I think is important for women especially, is if you, all three of you, could talk a minute just about your experience with negotiating the terms of your job offer. How was that experience for you? And do you have advice for the attendees for negotiating their job offers?
So I'll jump in. Oh,
Go ahead, Sheila.
so yeah, I think, you know, I got the advice when I was at UCSF just to know your worth. And you know, you've spent a long time in academia, and knowing that in order to take care of yourself going forward, you do deserve a certain level of salary. So, you know, be familiar with the range and ensure that you're comfortable with that range and you know that you're getting your minimum. So, you know, I went into a couple interviews with just, you know, what I wanted in mind, and companies are willing to negotiate. They have a lot more leverage than, you know, a postdoc PI might, because they're limited by their grant structure. So companies don't oftentimes have as, you know, as limiting of a structure. They can support you in different ways, and whether it's through additional benefits or a signing bonus or relocation bonus, like these things are all on the table. And so just knowing there's wiggle room with anything, I would say, is important. And so I just keep that in mind when I enter into those conversations, and try not to, you know, it's very easy to think, oh, like that first offer, just go for it. But, you know, I think remembering, it sounds great coming out of academia regardless, but, everything's negotiable, and just always do it, always.
It's great advice. Thank you. And I know, Kayla, you wanted to mention something.
Yeah, I can keep my advice brief here. I think that this is all about confidence and professionalism. I think that you need to remember it's okay to speak up for your own needs when negotiating. Everybody has basic needs, whether they're financial or other needs. And so being direct and respectful about that, but communicating it effectively, people will hear you. And I think that sums up my advice there. But I've done this. I know a lot of my female colleagues have as well. And it's just being an effective communicator and speaking up for yourself.
I just want to add that based on some studies, a lot of females don't negotiate as much as males do. So really know your rights, and as Sheila mentioned, that know your value and also do your study. So there are items in negotiation that you can negotiate within your contract. These may vary from private to public industry. If you're going to a governmental job, perhaps there's a union that you cannot change the range of your salary a lot. You can work on your PTOs, times off, or even sick leave. Like you're a parent, you have to give care. There's a lot of factors that you can still negotiate on. Or sometimes I've heard some people say, hey, I'm going to move to this town, and do you have any offer for my wife or my husband? She's doing this and that, and she can also work. And they ended up having a good offer as a couple. So I'm just trying to say, really understand what are the items that you can really strongly negotiate on. There are bonus packages, relocation packages that can, in the Bay Area, normally 10,000 plus. So you can really negotiate all of these items and get to the dollar amount that you were really happy to start with. And I recommend not starting a job until you want to happily start it. It's really important. And if you're not happy, communicate that with the HR or your hiring manager, that if you do this, I will happily start this job. And that really matters for them because they put a lot of cost in hiring you. At least in my industry, I know it's $20,000, $30,000 cost per employee. So it's really important.
That is great advice. Thank you all so much. We're a little after 11 and I want to be mindful of the panelist time. So I think Amanda has some closing statements, but I did copy Amanda's post earlier about the evaluation. So please, for our attendees, please fill out the evaluation. Panelists, Kayla, Nafis, and Sheila, thank you so much. And I will turn this back over to Amanda.
Thank you, Tracy, so much. Yes, you just posted the evaluation. We do appreciate your feedback, so take a couple minutes to do that. And Tracy, thank you so much for moderating. So appreciate your help yesterday and today. And last but certainly not least, our panelists were just terrific this morning. 3 amazing women in STEM doing amazing things. And I so appreciate your time this morning to talk with all of us. You gave us a ton of wonderful advice and encouragement. So really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I do want to thank our participants as well. Once again, had a number of fantastic questions. Appreciate the interactivity today. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Great seeing a lot of your faces.